Welcome to this episode of Pen to Paper Press Podcast. I'm Cindy Kochis. There is a backstory weaved into each book. To explore the creative process, I am sitting down with authors, writers, editors, publishers, and an array of creative souls to have a conversation centered around how we developed our stories to completing our works of art. Each episode is an opportunity for us to explore mindsets, pearls of wisdom, and the experiences that began our journey as an author from the moment we put pen to paper. Kristin Buchtel is an award-winning author. She has written Noteworthy Parenting, How to Use Your Own Ideas to Create Your Parenting Roadmap, and the complementary journal, Noteworthy Parenting Roadmap, a companion journal to note your best parenting plans. She is a former teacher and holds a master's in elementary education. During her years as a parent, she and her husband created notes and plans that they used on their journey as parents. It became their most valuable parenting tool, a parenting plan. Kristin's passion is to inspire others to find, plan, and embrace their own unique ways of parenting. Kristin, it is so good to have you here. Welcome.
Thank you for having me. I'm so excited to sit and chat with you today.
I am too. And, you know, your website, of course, because I go exploring, and I love how lighthearted it is and just it's fun. And one thing that I absolutely adored, and I thought, why didn't I think of that, is your illustration above your subscription box. And, you know, so are you doing all the illustrations on your website and in your book as well?
Yes, those are all my illustrations. Yes.
I love that illustration. So I noted that your book was published around the time that COVID was really kind of hitting hard. And as an author of a book, we got to get the word out there. We got to tell people, hey, look what I've done. Look, come buy my book, read my book. You know, you're an award-winning author, so you did something right. Do you mind sharing how you got out there and connected with your readers and how you grew your audience?
Sure. Yes, that was a crazy time to launch a book. As a matter of fact, as we talk today, it is exactly 2 years to the day as my book launch day was. January 31st. So I'm celebrating with you today.
Yes.
Thank you very much.
You are welcome.
I didn't realize that till a little bit ago, but my plan was to, go out and speak in schools and with, parenting groups. And of course, all of that got shut down. And some of the hardest hit people, I think, during the pandemic were parents. They're trying to get their kids on Zoom, and, everybody was just overwhelmed, and they're working and they're burned out. So, it really wasn't a time to really, try to get my information out there via Zoom to parents either. So instead, I turned to my blog and social media and just continued to write blogs that I thought would help parents with activities and tips on how to take care of themselves and have stamina and take brain breaks, just to help them survive in some way, shape, or form. In my neighborhood, I used a little chalkboard, like one of those restaurants, tripod chalkboards. And every Wednesday, stuck it out in my yard with a different theme of activities for the neighborhood kids. And then I'd post that on social media to not only help kids in the neighborhood and families, but also, people online. And honestly, just tag teaming and working with other authors is huge. My book lends itself to that because I don't tell people how to parent, but I tell them to take all the great information that's out there and create their own plans. So it's a really fun, great opportunity to work with other people. I've done some book giveaways. I've collaborated with other authors by exchanging books. And then I call it parenting graffiti for books. So going through and taking a parenting book and writing in it what you like and dog-earing the pages. So I'll do a quick little video on that. That's kind of fun for the other author and put our books together. But yeah, it's a crazy time. And I'm still working in that mode, but now starting to plan, hopefully by, this summer or into next fall, being able to do some in-person fun workshops with parents again.
It'll be nice to be able to do the in-person. It has been very challenging. And it is one question that continues to pop up because so many people did launch. Well, let me rephrase that. For 2 years, a lot of books have been published and writers have been creative in trying to get their word out there. And some people have found it over challenging. And so they've kind of given up. And that breaks my heart because, I don't want anybody to ever give up. I get it. I understand why. The self-defeat, what's the point of this, and so on and so forth. But I love the fact that you were like, oh, this ain't stopping me. I got to get more creative.
Yes.
And I love that you put the sign out in the neighborhood and then took pictures of it. Oh, brilliant. Where do you come up with these ideas?
Well, I think part of it is being a parent myself. My kids are grown now, but and also a former teacher. My heart goes out. My heart was out there for these parents. I mean, it was such a shock in the beginning of the shutdowns, and it was such a surprise to everybody. But then it continued to linger on longer than we all expected. Mm-hmm. And it was fun. And honestly, I was at home with all 3 of my adult kids and my husband. My husband traveled every week and he was home, and all of us, and they were busy doing things. And so it gave me a mission to help, and what better way? It's fun. It's fun to write about activities and things to help, parents. It's easy. It's not like I'm writing about algebra or something. So, it brought me joy to put that out there and to help other people. And it was fun thinking about what I was going to write next for the blog.
You illustrated the books. Have you always enjoyed doing the creative touch? Or is this something that you decided to learn how to do before, creating your book?
Well, putting this book together, writing it, and then illustrating it both were brand new adventures for me. So the mission of helping parents create their own instruction manual was what drove the very steep learning curve that I went on to do this. So a good friend of ours, she is a graphic, I can't think of it, a graphic designer. She goes in and draws during business meetings, strategic illustrator. That's what she is.
Oh, interesting.
She goes in, during business strategy meetings, she draws what they're thinking. And I was fascinated by this. And also at the same time, sketchnoting has been was kind of an up and coming thing. And I felt like in order to make this book a quick read for parents, so they could get to the nitty gritty of creating their own parenting plans, I wanted it to be a quick, easy read. And mm-hmm. Pictures are worth 1,000 words.
Oh, yes.
So I practiced drawing, and they're, it's an ode to stick people a little bit, but I wanted it to be have a vibe of parenting isn't about being perfect, and obviously these drawings are not perfect. I wanted there to be a little humor, but a lot of information packed into the illustrations. So there's over 90 illustrations in the book. And when I went to, hire people to help me get this book put together, a lot of people didn't want to do that. That was too many illustrations for them to put together in the book along with the text. But fortunately, I found a great crew of people, and they were like, nope, no problem at all. And they took those illustrations and helped me format the book. And so it has been an adventure. I will say it was a fun adventure, but a lot of learning and a lot of practice. A lot of paper was used practicing.
I'm sure. But it sounds like you had so much fun doing it, though.
I did. I really did. As I said earlier, my husband traveled a lot, so I would, occasionally go with him, and I'd have my sketchbooks with me, my pens, my pencils, and just constantly practice.
That's fun. That's really fun. Now, with your years as a teacher, and then you have the 4 kids, and then you have your grandkids. Did you pull your inspiration from them mostly, or was it from more like your students that you really inspired the book?
It's a great question. The book actually came about because my husband and I, as our oldest was approaching middle school, I started worrying. I wasn't ready for her to be in middle school. I wasn't ready for those bigger issues. I was getting nervous, and we happened to be on a road trip, and I was talking to my husband. We realized that he was raised a little different than I was raised. Not necessarily one way was better than another, but it was just the fact that we realized we weren't going to be on the same page with things. So we started talking about, what we wanted for our kids, our goals, different things that, we felt were important to be on the same page for parenting, dating, etc. And we created this notebook, and we had friends of ours that as issues would come up with them, we'd say, oh yeah, that's in our notes. And so they wanted to see the notes, not because we were experts in parenting, but because they wanted to create their own notebook. And also, as a teacher, parents would come in during conferences, and they would maybe, be struggling with a parenting issue and say, oh, I went to this class, or I've read this book and I followed it to the T, and it's not working. And after talking with them, we'd realize that maybe it was just 1 or 2 little things they might want to tweak. And then they were able to take off with that plan. So there was just kind of a need for parents out there to realize you are your unique family, your unique parenting style is what you should instruct your kids with. Of course, there's so many awesome resources out there, and use those by all means.
Yes.
But how do you put that together in a plan that is useful and helpful for you? So it came from that realm. I've never written a book. I've never considered myself as a writer or an illustrator. And it took a long time to pull it together, but it was fun in the process, very steep learning curve, but sometimes we just need to take things one step at a time. And I really tried to focus on that and not get too overwhelmed by all the moving parts.
There are a lot of moving parts, that is for certain. So you mentioned that you had a lot of steep learning curves. What were some of the things that kind of took you by surprise that, oh, I didn't realize I had to do that?
Well, first of all, I think creating a platform, the author platform, is such an important piece to actually reach your audience, not just getting your book into a bookstore or having it at a workshop that you have. You need to actually, participate in that marketing piece of sharing what your book is about. So I think that starting that while I was still writing the book was an important piece. And I'm thankful I started it while I was writing the book rather than after I had finished it. And then also the editing piece. I knew I was going to need a lot of help with editing, but I loved the way it was done in stages. So in the beginning, it was more of a structure meetup that I would have with my editor. and we reworked some of the chapters and moved some of the bigger pieces. And then it really narrows down into, the grammar and the, specifics as you move on. So how many rounds? I want to say it was probably, and then proofing on top of it, it's at least 4 to 6 rounds of proofing and editing that goes back and forth. My editor did comment that, most people, they are very protective of their work. And I was the opposite. I couldn't wait to put it on her lap to look at, and there was something, you do need a break from your own writing, I think. So there was that break while she looked at it before she gave it back to me. So, that was kind of a nice, break in between the parts and the pieces. But the editing was a lot more cumbersome than I expected.
Well, and the thing is, though, when you're reading the book and you're looking at it day after day after day and tweaking this and tweaking that, your mind sees it in a specific way, how you assume, your voice is being portrayed. And then when you walk away from it, for a period of time, and then you come back and it's like, who was I thinking?
Yes, that did happen.
It's like, why did I put that there? And wait a minute, is that really the tone of voice I want to use? So yeah, it is good to break away from that. So with your marketing then, obviously you said you were going through social media. Are you doing this, yourself, or do you have someone helping you to kind of come up with these different ideas? And because the reason that I asked this is because of the fact that just before we hit the record button, we took our cell phones. Well, you said, let me take a picture. Do you mind if I take a picture and put it on Instagram? And I'll post it up there just before the podcast launch for, as a pre-marketing element. And I'm like, why? This, I just published broadcast, I guess it's broadcasting, the 50th episode of Pen to Paper Press podcast. And it's like, why haven't I thought about that? I've got all of these great people that I'm speaking with. Why didn't I think to, hey, do you mind if I take a picture? I'm like, brilliant. Where are you coming up with these brilliant ideas? Is this like it just comes to you, or are you researching? Where are you getting these insights?
All of the above. I would say, things like the chalkboard in the neighborhood, that was just something that came to me. I thought it would be fun because everyone was out walking in the neighborhood. You'd see these pods of families walking down the street, because everyone was trying to get out and get fresh air while we were locked up. So that was one way. But as far as the taking the picture ahead of time, I've just seen other accounts do it. I think as a teacher, we always, use the saying, there's no reason to reinvent the wheel necessarily. If some lesson or idea that another teacher is doing is really working well, sure, tweak it and make it your own, but by all, use that, as a time saver. And so I watch what other accounts are doing. Again, that collaborative piece is so important. I've seen other accounts take pictures before they've done their podcast and promote it, even though that podcast may not go live for a couple of weeks. It kind of teases out what's coming. It's just fun. It's fun to see what other accounts do as far as, maybe taking polls or asking questions or getting engagement, and dabbling. You got to experiment. I mean, in the beginning, making certain videos and things, it's awkward, it's hard, it's, didn't quite turn out as you wanted or whatever that may be. But if you don't dive in and try it, you'll never kind of make that progress towards, creating those things and getting the stuff out there. But I have watched plenty of YouTube videos. I have taken classes, online. I belong to the Colorado Independent Publishers Association, and they offer lots of tips. They have monthly, meetings you can attend. So I'd recommend all those things. However, you can go down the rabbit hole so deeply with a million ideas that you don't get started and do them. So, I've done that too. You just have to say, okay, I'm going to do these 3 things or 4 things, and I'm going to run with that and do that. So cheating and using other people's ideas really helps a lot.
Well, and you can, so like you said, so easily rabbit hole into this. Oh, this is a great idea. What else is out there? And looking all this stuff up, that it begins to become a form of procrastination. Oh, I got to look this stuff up before I can do X, Y, Z. Yes. So we could really, use that as a procrastination tool. Because you're a teacher, you're used to working by a schedule, by blocks of time, and, plotting things out in a strategic manner. Did you encounter procrastination?
Yes. Well, you would think that as a former teacher, I would be a very organized person. I actually job shared for the last 3 years. I taught in a first grade classroom with another lady, and we were the odd couple. She was very organized and neat, and I was always the creative kind of hot mess in the background. So we are dear friends to this day, and God bless her. I didn't drive her too crazy, but maybe I did. But so I would say in the beginning, for me, there was a lot of procrastination, and part of it was because I didn't really know how to proceed. I didn't know, is it more important to have an outline or just write things down? And I did hear that in your 50th episode, the talk about, is there always a perfect way to do it? And there's really not. You just got to dive in. And so, once I enlisted help from an editor, and I did have deadlines, that helped me a lot to get this project done. And so I really did need to hire help to give me those parameters and deadlines, and kind of hold my hand through the process of taking what was in my head and putting it into the book.
And having that, even if it's not an editor, but an accountability partner, somebody that you have to check in with, and you have to not lie and say, nope, I didn't write today. I'm sorry.
That's a great idea. That's what I could have really used. Yes.
It does help. I mean, having that accountability person that just you check in with, whether it's once a week. I have friends that have the accountability partner that they meet once a day, where they do a once a day check-in, and I'm like, I have too many balls in the air that I'm juggling. There's no way I can, because I'm not a short talker. I'm somebody who would be like, so how are you doing? So how are the kids? What's going on? Tell me about blah. So, or I'll start telling that, oversharing my stuff. So, I don't think on a daily basis I could do it, but once a week has worked for me in the past. I used to have a writers group that I used to meet. It was a group of, initially there was 5 of us, and then I went down to 4. One gal had some stuff come up and she wasn't able to join us, but we met every week, and we went through, our book and where we were, and if we had questions. And that was actually part of what sparked, because I have a writer's circle, and that was part of what inspired that, because it was like, I didn't see that in the arena that I was in. It has proved to be beneficial, and it does help with that procrastination kind of sort of sometimes. Okay, so
Yes. And it's probably okay to have a little bit of procrastination, because we might need to marinate on things a little bit. But yeah, I think the writer's circle idea is fantastic. I need those people.
Yeah. So, and then when you were at the very beginning, you were talking about the Zoom and everybody getting acclimated to, parents and children learning how to even function with Zoom. For some people, it's very complicated. And I love how you worded the phrase brain break. That's what we all need. And we do need to walk away from our screens here and there and whenever we can. Me, who works on a computer, that's not always so easy, but I do have a dog that needs to go outside every once in a while. So I get that brain break. So with your writing and your editing, when it came time to publishing your book, now, did you decide to self-publish, or did you go after the avenues of having a hybrid publisher or one of the big named publishers to guide you on this journey?
I was so overwhelmed by even reaching out to a publisher that I took on this task as becoming self-published from the beginning. Mm-hmm. And I did end up hiring somewhat of, you might call it a hybrid company. The woman that runs the company, she went through this process and she had a horrible experience and decided to start her own business. So she helps you through it, but you have all the rights to your book, etc. And mm-hmm. a lot of and the creative license, I think, because I had so many sketches and different things, I wanted this book to be somewhat of a workbook on the inside as well. Mm-hmm. She helped out with that and guided me all the way through, but I still remained, kind of in charge of choosing which book cover and how I liked things. And she'd say, well, you might not want to do this piece because it, that book cover won't be as effective versus something else. I mean, it was really great. And there was a team of people. So there's a team of people to work with. And I think that was the best way to get my feet wet, mm-hmm. Was to have that guidance, because that helped me learn. If I would have gone with a publisher, which would have been awesome too, I just didn't really even know how to get my foot in the door with that process. But I learned so much by actually having to make those decisions with them. And it was a great way to, learn about putting a book together. And unbelievable how many pieces and moving parts there are, as you well know. And so I was appreciative of that, and the guidance with marketing and networking and recommending those types of things. So it was a hard decision, but it was what I just didn't know. I really just didn't know, being a first timer. Mm-hmm. Which direction I should really go.
And that is something that we all face, because it's like, am I making the right decision? How did so-and-so did it? Did it work for them? Did it not work for them? How can I do it differently? How can I do it better? And like you said, not going through and trying to invent a new wheel or another object to roll down a hill. So, so out of curiosity, because I was speaking with someone and they're new to the whole writing experience, and they're under the assumption that she's gotten the draft done, she's about to get it edited, and she's thinking that in less than a month that she can publish a book. And I'm like, you might want to add some more time to your frame, because I think you've underestimated how long it takes. For you, once you got to where you felt comfortable that my book is done, I have this beautiful work of art in my hands, this is phenomenal, from that point to actually having the printed copies in your hand and having said, I'm a published author. How much time was elapsed between, oh, I have this piece that's ready to go?
I would look back and it may be skewed because there's been a couple years now. But, after I had done the editing piece and we moved to the proofing, there was maybe 2 steps in that process. So let's say from proofing it to actually having it in my hand was probably a good 4 to 6 months, because the proofer took it, then I got it back and I had to go through and read it again. And then there was a few mistakes and things that we hadn't caught. And so then we fixed those and then did it again. I would say it took about that amount of time. And also there was a lot of formatting with all the sketches that I have in there. But yeah, it was longer than I had anticipated too. I really thought it would have been a much quicker process. I think I hired the editor in March, and I actually held it in my hand in December of 2019, but we released it in January of 2020. So it is it's a long wait for that, because you're so excited. You're so excited to get that in your hand, and to wait for that as it gets closer. It's just it's like almost like having a baby. You've waited and waited and waited and waited and waited, and finally the day comes. But no, you're right. It's going to be longer than the months, unfortunately.
Well, and so several people on here, moms especially, have said, I birthed the book. and it's always with a sigh of relief, like, I did it. Yes. It was a long, hard process, but I did it. And look what I have.
Yes, it feels a lot like that. When that book showed up and I was able to hold it in my hand, it was a very, you're just elated. It was such a process. I honestly couldn't believe I did it. I couldn't believe I did it, but holding it in your hand makes it real.
Oh, yes, it does. Because it's like, I did this, yay! And I've had friends that have done a Facebook Live when opening up their box that they just got from wherever they got it published at, and always the reaction. I mean, it doesn't matter if it's their first book, if it's their second book, their third book, their reactions are always the same. It's like, it's like, oh, mine, I did this. Oh my God, I can't believe this. And usually tears are involved. Tears of joy, that is. Not tears of, oh my God, what did I do?
Right.
Oh my God, what did I do this for? No. Yeah, that doesn't happen. I hope. Unless... Oh, go ahead.
I was just going to say that must be awesome to be a part of that, over and over again, to see authors have that moment. That's got to be an amazing thing.
Yeah, well, I belong to several programs or Facebook groups that, are with authors, by authors, and so forth. And a lot of my friends are authors. And so, yes, it's really interesting to see the reactions, and it's a very unique experience.
See, isn't it so fun to have authors speak? I mean, going back and forth and talking about books, and this is just, it's such a great podcast, and it's such a great way for people that are writing their books. And I remember being in the muck of that and just thinking, will I ever get there? And then, now I'm talking with you, and it's so fun. It's fun to talk about, what your book is about, how you get there. It's just awesome.
Well, and it reminds not only the person who's gone through it, but the one that's going through it, that I can keep going. I can keep going. They did it. I can do it. It just helps to keep reinforcing that everybody thinks at some point, what did I get myself into? And holy moly, do I really want to keep going with this? And then they'll step away from it. They'll give up. They'll step away from it for a little bit. And then something inside of them is like, this is fun, remember? And then it's like there's that little gnawing that says, you got to finish the book.
Yes.
So do you have other books that you're working on?
I have in my head, I have a few ideas of taking, the general theme of creating a parenting roadmap and actually taking it a step further with more detail and instruction in a little bit different format than what I have. I have some notes, and that's as far as I've gotten. So it's there, and exactly what you just said, it's sitting there waiting for me to come back to it and start moving forward with more of a plan, and then reaching out for help. And now I know I need, I'll need a buddy to keep me on track a little better. Maybe I'll get it, done a little quicker than the first time. But, those ideas are out there. And I think it's, it's one of those things where you do need to have a little, for me, not everybody, some people don't need this, but I need a little time in between to, have that breath and before getting my head, sitting my buns down in the chair, head down and focused again. So yes, it's waiting there. Now I'm going to go work on that this afternoon because you mentioned that. So you could be the reason I start up again. Yeah.
You're welcome.
Thank you. Yes, thank you.
And if 4 hours into it, you're like, that's Cindy, and start cursing me out, I'm going to still sit here with a smile on my face going, you're welcome.
Okay. That's good. That's good. Yes.
Sometimes we need that. And, it's easy to say I'm a writer. It's another thing to actually write. Been there, done that, rode that pony. Actually, I'm still riding that pony because I have a handful of books that I've started. I have 2 memoirs that I've started. One got precursed with the death of my son. And then that's the second memoir that I'm working on. And I rabbit holed, and I had to set that aside because it was, bad. I have another novel that's completed. It'll probably never, ever, ever see a printing press because it goes nowhere. It was fun for me to write it, but when I look back at it, it's like, what's the point of the story? So that one will never see a printing press. And then I have a couple of more, but they're on a computer that I can't access. So is there anything that you would like to, a piece of, or a pearl of wisdom that you would like to share with somebody out there who is like, oh, do I really want to keep going? What would be something that you would say to them?
Well, yes, keep going. And I think what I would like to share is my book. The quote I use a lot of times with my book is, parenting is not about perfection. It's about the power in your plan. And I would say that about being an author. It's not about perfection. It's about more the power of sticking to it and getting to the end. It's in using, getting helpers along the way. And maybe if you need to take a little break, take that little break. It's not about a perfect path, a perfect outline, but it's about just diving in and doing it. I was so worried about the fact that, I'm not great with grammar. I'm not great with spelling. I don't draw. And here, I made it through. I did have to get help and get to the point where it's actually a published work. But yeah, it's not about being perfect. And I think that really keeps us in the mud sometimes, is we're embarrassed or we aren't sure. Somebody may think that, I thought, they may think I'm illiterate, and they'll be glad I was out of the classroom because, they'll look at my grammar and say, what is this woman thinking and what is she writing? But that own, my own ego was getting in the way with that. And so sometimes we just have to let other people in and, roll forward with it to get it done. So don't worry about being perfect. Set that ego to the side, and go.
And I didn't even think about that, but being a teacher, there is that expectation that all your I's are dotted, all your T's are crossed, all your periods are in the right place, and you have used a semicolon where a semicolon should be used.
Yes. And, when you teach first grade writers, there's none, it's basic. We're just getting the sounds out in the words. And so when you live your life in that realm too, you have forgotten a lot of those other things. When you're outside of the grammar class that you used to have, unless you're a writer daily, you aren't always thinking about those things. So you're like, oh, is it this? Is it that? And where do I go find the information for that? And yeah, there was a little pressure there for sure.
Well, because when somebody says, oh yeah, I've got a master's in education, they immediately think, ooh, she's smart. She knows all the answers.
Yeah.
But what they
now
forget
everyone knows the truth now.
but you're human. You're human, and we are meant to be imperfectly perfect, or perfectly imperfect. However you want to put the two words together. That's just how we're meant to be. If we were all perfect and all the same, boring.
Yes.
We would all be so boring. The fact that we're all different and we have different opinions, that makes it interesting and fun.
Absolutely.
And it's our perception whether or not to look at it as like interesting, haha, or interesting, like, ooh.
Right. Yes.
Don't want to go there. Nope. Thank you. Well, I want to thank you, Kristin, for being here, for being an educator, because you're right, especially this time, I don't even know what to call this period of time that we're in. I don't think there's the right adjectives for it. For the teachers that are out there slugging their way through this, trying to make sense and trying to make education fun and all of that, my hat is off to everyone in the education system trying their best to help the children and the teenagers. Oh, I can't imagine. I know it's hard on the younger kids, but I cannot imagine what it's got to be like for the teenagers who are being isolated away from their friends, from the social interactions. I can imagine that it's extremely difficult on everybody involved. So.
Oh, I agree. I agree with you wholeheartedly. I think it's been a rough go, and eventually, we'll work our way through this, but we're not done with it yet, and they just all keep fighting through. So, yes, hats off to all of them for sure. Totally agree.
Yes. So thank you for being here on the podcast. I have truly enjoyed our conversation. And again, the illustrations on your website is very, very fun. And go ahead and tell people what your website is.
Sure. noteworthyparenting.com. So come and visit me. And thank you for having me today. This was so much fun. I had a great time.
You are welcome. Thank you. And I do. I love the graphic that you have above your sign up for your newsletter. That is awesome.
Oh, thank you. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. Before we end our time together, I'd like to say thank you for listening to my conversation with Kristin Buchtel. To access her website and purchase the books she has written, visit pentopaperpress.com/podcast and select the show notes page for this episode. What is the one takeaway you received from this conversation? Share with us on the show notes page how you held yourself accountable to publishing your book. What impact has a writer's circle had on the book you're writing? This episode is sponsored by Women Health Circle. It is a transformational online health community for women. I'm a member of Rachel Kiefer's group coaching program, and I love her approach to nurturing our precious bodies. To learn more, visit healthnutgirl.com. Again, that website is healthnutgirl.com. To receive future episodes in your inbox, subscribe to the newsletter and follow the podcast on your favorite podcast application. You are invited to share your favorite episodes with individuals who you feel will resonate with the content. Take care, and until next time, keep your pen to paper and write. Your words have power, and your story matters. Bye for now.